The dense woods of Pennsylvania stretched endlessly before them, a labyrinth of towering oaks and twisted branches, their leaves whispering secrets in the wind. The sun hung low in the sky, its dying light painting the forest in eerie hues of gold and shadow. For most people, these woods were a beautiful, quiet escape from the chaos of everyday life. For Alex, MIA, and their friends, however, this was more than just a retreat. It was a place of deep, unspeakable terror. They had arrived late in the afternoon, setting up camp near the edge of a forgotten trail that only a few locals dared to explore. The forest, wild and untamed, had been the subject of local legends for decades. There were tales of strange creatures lurking in the shadows, tales of an entity so ancient that it had never been fully understood, only feared. These were stories passed down through generations, whispered in hushed voices around campfires, dismissed as nothing more than superstition. But as they unloaded their gear and set up their tents, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "Let's get a fire going," MIA said, her voice cheerful, though there was an edge of nervousness in it. The group had been talking about camping here for weeks, eager for an adventure, but Mia's smile seemed strained. "Yeah, sure," Alex responded, trying to sound confident, though he felt the same unease creeping into his mind. He noticed how quiet the forest seemed, too quiet. Even the birds had stopped singing. As the fire crackled to life, the group gathered around it, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. The shadows of the trees stretched long into the night, and the wind howled in the distance. It was peaceful at first, almost too peaceful. But Alex's mind kept drifting back to the strange, unsettling things he had heard from the locals. "Do you guys know about the creature that haunts these woods?" he asked, trying to break the tension. MIA rolled her eyes. "You mean the Bigfoot stories?" "Oh please, Alex, you don't really believe in that stuff, do you?" "I don't know," Alex's voice faltered, as if the words were caught somewhere between disbelief and fear. "It's not just Bigfoot. There's a lot more. They say something in these woods has been here longer than any of us. Something, not human." The fire flickered as a gust of wind blew through the camp, sending a chill down their spines. For a moment, all of them were silent, the distant sound of rustling leaves filling the void. But then, as if trying to shrug off the discomfort, MIA laughed. "Come on, we're here to have fun, right? Let's not ruin it with ghost stories." "Yeah," agreed Brad, one of their friends. "Besides, even if there's something out there, what's it gonna do? It's probably just a bear or some other animal. We've got weapons and food, we'll be fine." But something about Brad's words didn't sit right with Alex. He glanced around the camp, staring into the inky blackness that seemed to stretch endlessly beyond the reach of the firelight. There was no sound, no movement, just the oppressive silence of the woods. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. A sudden sound broke the stillness, soft, but unmistakable. It was a low, guttural growl, like something big was breathing heavily just beyond the camp's perimeter. The group froze. "What the hell was that?" MIA whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Alex stood up, straining his eyes to peer into the darkness. "There was nothing but the trees and the night. I'm sure it was just a deer," Brad said, though his voice lacked conviction. But the growl came again, louder this time, followed by a series of unsettling sounds, scratching, dragging, and the unmistakable sound of something large moving through the underbrush. This was no deer, and Alex's heart began to race. "Maybe we should go inside the tents," MIA suggested, her voice trembling. "It's probably just an animal, but I don't feel good about this." "Yeah, let's pack it up," Alex said quickly, his fear growing. "We should just," but before he could finish, a shadow darted across the campfire, moving far too quickly to be any animal Alex had ever seen. It was tall, far taller than any man, and the shape, it was wrong. Alex's breath caught in his throat as the shadow vanished into the trees. The growl came again, closer now. "What the hell was that?" Brad shouted, his eyes wide with terror. I don't know," Alex muttered, feeling his body freeze in place. His mind was racing, but his legs refused to move. Then they heard it, the unmistakable sound of something heavy breaking branches and moving through the woods, but not like an animal. This was deliberate, as if whatever was out there was hunting them. "We need to go. Now!" Alex shouted, snapping them out of their trance. Everyone, grab your stuff, we need to get out of here. But as they scrambled to gather their things, the air seemed to thicken, as if the forest itself was holding them captive. And that's when they saw it. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall, impossibly tall, its body covered in matted fur, its face obscured by shadows. But what struck them the most were its eyes, dozens of them, blinking in unison, reflecting the firelight like the eyes of 1,000 animals. It moved with a terrifying speed, its limbs contorting unnaturally, each hand and foot twisted into grotesque, elongated shapes. The creature let out a bone-chilling scream, and the ground beneath them seemed to tremble. They didn't have time to scream. They didn't have time to run. The thing was upon them. The night air felt thick with dread, as if the world itself had gone silent in the face of what had just emerged from the shadows. The group had scattered in a frenzy, with no clear direction, no plan, just pure, unfiltered panic. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted through the underbrush, his legs burning with every step. He could hear Mia's frantic breath somewhere behind him, but he dared not stop to look. The sound of the creature, the thing with countless eyes, was still echoing in his mind, haunting him even as he tried to escape. In the distance, he heard a crack, a scream. His stomach dropped. "MIA, damn it," he gasped, pushing himself harder. The trees around him blurred into nothingness as he ran, his mind locked on nothing but survival. The campfire was now a distant memory, replaced by the blackness of the forest. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. The night felt alive, alive with something far worse than any creature he had ever read about in books. He slowed only for a moment, his breath ragged and desperate. The sound of something massive moving through the trees sent him bolting forward once more. He needed to find Mia, to make sure she was okay. He needed to know if the others were alive. As he rounded a corner in the thick forest, he saw her, Mia, huddled against a tree, her face pale and covered in dirt, her eyes wide with terror. She was shaking, not from the cold, but from fear. Mia. Alex called, rushing to her side, her gaze shot to him, and for a moment, she seemed disoriented. "Alex, it's real, it's real. It's coming for us. We have to leave, now." I know, Alex said, pulling her to her feet. "Where's Brad? Where's everyone else?" I don't know," Mia stammered. "I heard Brad scream, but I couldn't find him. We need to go back to the camp, get the rest, and get out of here. That thing isn't human. It's not a bear, it's not anything I've ever seen before." It was, her voice faltered, as if the words couldn't capture the terror she felt. "It had too many eyes, Alex. So many eyes, and it was watching us." Alex's skin crawled as her words sunk in. His mind flashed back to the shadow he had seen moving through the trees earlier, the creature's eyes glinting in the firelight like a nightmare made flesh. "We can't go back. Not to the camp. It's too dangerous. We need to get out of here, now." They both froze, hearing it again, the growl. Low and guttural, reverberating through the forest. It was close, too close. Alex's breath caught in his throat. "Run," he shouted, grabbing Mia's arm and pulling her along. They had to move fast. There was no time to think, no time to strategize. The creature was out there, and if it wasn't already hunting them, it soon would be. They ran as fast as they could, weaving through the trees, branches scraping their faces and limbs. Alex could feel the air growing heavier, thick with the tension of being hunted. Every sound was amplified in his ears, the snapping of twigs beneath his feet, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of something moving through the brush. But above all, he heard the creature's growl, growing louder with each passing moment. Then, a sharp cry echoed through the night, "Mia." Alex's stomach turned. He stopped dead in his tracks, his heart hammering in his chest. He looked around, scanning the trees. "Brad," he shouted. There was no answer. "Brad, where are you?" Mia's voice trembled. As she looked desperately into the dark, Alex turned in circles, his pulse racing. "We can't stop, we can't stay here," he said, grabbing her arm. "We need to keep moving." But Mia jerked her arm free, her eyes wild. "What if it has him? What if we'll find him?" Alex said firmly, though his voice lacked the certainty he wanted. He turned and forced Mia to follow him deeper into the forest. Praying they weren't too late, they pushed on for what felt like hours, but the forest was unrelenting. No matter how fast they ran, no matter how many trees they passed, the sounds of something following them, the creature, the thing with too many eyes, grew louder, closer. And Alex could feel it in his bones. It wasn't just chasing them. It was toying with them. Playing a deadly game of cat and mouse. Alex's mind raced. What the hell was this thing? Where did it come from? And why was it hunting them? The more he thought about it, the less sense it made. They had heard the stories, half fables, half myths, of creatures in the woods, of ancient beings who had once roamed the earth, but no one had ever believed them. They had chalked it up to overactive imaginations and old wives' tales. But now, with every bone in his body telling him to run faster, Alex couldn't deny the truth. It was real. And it was hunting them. Suddenly, Mia stumbled, falling to the ground with a sharp cry. Alex spun around, reaching for her, but before he could pull her to her feet, he heard it, the unmistakable sound of something crashing through the woods, closing in on them, something massive. Mia! Get up! Alex yelled, his voice hoarse. She grabbed his hand, her face stricken with fear. I can't, Alex. It's too fast. It's too strong. They both heard it then, the unmistakable sound of limbs cracking, branches snapping, and the sound of something large and relentless closing in. Alex pulled Mia up and began to drag her along, but before they could get more than a few steps, a monstrous shadow appeared before them. It was the creature, its many eyes gleamed in the darkness, reflecting the faint light of the moon as it loomed over them. Its body was massive, towering above them like some ancient god, its limbs twisted and elongated. The smell of decay hung thick in the air as it stepped forward, each movement sending a ripple of terror through the forest, and then, with a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the earth, it spoke, "Run, or die." The creature stood before them, its eyes unblinking and terrifying. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the massive being slowly took a step forward. It towered over them, its twisted limbs stretching unnaturally in every direction. Alex could feel his heart pounding in his chest as his legs trembled beneath him, paralyzed by fear. Mia gasped beside him, her hand gripping his arm with all the strength she had left. The thing moved again, its arms, no, its many arms, extended like grotesque spider limbs, each one covered in pulsating, slick skin. There were at least a dozen of them, each hand ending in sharp, talon-like fingers that scraped the forest floor as it stepped closer. Its body was a warped, unsettling mass of limbs and eyes, the eyes blinking in unison, all fixated on them. It wasn't just a monster. It was something far older, far more sinister. What is it? Mia whispered, her voice shaking. Alex couldn't tear his eyes away from the creature. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, and for a brief moment, he wondered if he had fallen into some kind of nightmare. But the cold air, the damp ground beneath his feet, and the smell of decay told him that this was real. The creature's many eyes flickered as if it had heard her question, then slowly it opened its mouth. But instead of a typical roar or scream, the words that came from its throat were nothing short of chilling. It wasn't a language they could understand, it was like the sounds of 1,000 voices overlapping, a discordant, unsettling symphony. You should not have come here. Alex felt the ground tremble beneath him as the words reverberated through the air. His heart raced, the fear gripping him tighter than ever before. The creature's voice, it was ancient. And it was speaking to them, as if it had known they would come. As if it had been waiting. We are the watchers of the forest. The creature's voice continued, its eyes gleaming with malice. We are the keepers of the old world. You trespass in our domain, and for that, you will suffer. Mia's breath hitched. What are you? What do you want from us? The creature tilted its head, and for a moment, its many eyes blinked in unison. Then it took another step forward, causing the leaves on the ground to crunch underfoot. I am the shadow of this land. I have been here since the beginning of time. I have watched over this forest and all who enter it. Those who seek to disturb the balance, they become my prey. Alex's mind raced. This thing wasn't just a creature, it was something far older, a being tied to the very heart of the forest. He remembered the old tales, the ones people whispered in fear. They were more than stories. They were warnings, but why? Why are you doing this? Alex demanded, his voice louder than he intended. We didn't mean any harm. We didn't know. The creature's many arms twitched, and one of its hands reached out, slowly brushing past Alex's face. He flinched, the touch cold and clammy like a corpse. You disturbed the sacred ground. The forest is not just a place. It is alive, and it will protect itself. It has always been this way. As it spoke, Alex began to feel the pull of something deeper, something hidden beneath the ground. He could hear it now, the soft whispers of the forest, growing louder and louder, filling his mind with fragmented thoughts. He stumbled back, clutching his head in confusion. What is this? He whispered, panic rising in his chest. MIA, too, looked overwhelmed. It's in my head, Alex. It's trying to speak to me. I can hear it. It's not just the creature. The forest itself, it's alive. It knows. The creature's eyes glinted as if it were amused. The forest is not just trees and earth. It is a living, breathing entity, and I am its heart. I am its protector. I have watched the world change, and I have watched the trespassers come and go. You are the latest in a long line of fools who think they can tame what is untamable. Alex felt the air around him grow heavy, suffocating. He could feel the forest closing in, the trees bending toward them like ancient, twisted hands. Their whispers were growing louder. He could feel the life of the forest pulsing through the ground, through the air, through the very blood in his veins. It was as if the forest had always known they would come. And now that they had disturbed it, they were part of something far bigger than themselves. You can run. You can hide. But it will not save you. The creature's voice echoed in his mind, as if it were everywhere at once. Without thinking, Alex grabbed Mia's hand and pulled her toward the trees. The creature seemed to pause, watching them, its eyes flickering with some kind of dark amusement. But it did not move. You cannot escape me. But Alex wasn't thinking about escape. He was thinking about the only thing that might save them. MIA, we need to destroy it, Alex said, his voice steady despite the terror gnawing at him. We need to burn it. The forest, it's weak when the fire comes. The fire cleanses. MIA looked at him, her eyes wide with fear. You want to burn it down? The whole forest? It's too big, Alex. We'll die trying. I don't care, Alex said, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. It's us or it. They ran. Every step was a battle against the overwhelming sense that they were being pulled back, sucked into the nightmare. But Alex's mind was focused now, focused on finding something, anything, to fight back with. They found it, a clearing. And in the center of the clearing, an old, decaying tree. Its trunk was gnarled and twisted, but at its base, Alex saw the remnants of an old campsite. There, among the charred remains of an ancient fire pit, was a stash of old camping supplies, some gas cans, and a pack of matches. He grabbed the gas can and splashed it over the ground, over the base of the tree, and into the thick roots that seemed to pulse with the life of the forest. Their whispers grew louder, as if the trees themselves were screaming in protest. Alex, hurry! MIA shouted, her voice filled with panic. The sound of the creature's heavy steps was growing closer again. He struck the match and threw it into the pit. The fire exploded with a terrifying roar, sending a wave of heat and light into the surrounding darkness. The trees seemed to shudder, their branches writhing like snakes as the fire began to spread. The creature howled in rage, a deafening scream that split the night. For a moment, everything was chaos. The fire crackled and burned as the ground beneath their feet shook. But then, as if it had never existed at all, the creature let out one final, desperate scream, and its form disintegrated into the smoke and flames. Its many eyes flickered out, one by one, until there was nothing left but the crackling of the fire, and then, silence. The forest was still. The air smelled of ash and smoke, the echoes of the creature's presence fading away into nothingness. Alex collapsed to his knees, his breath coming in ragged gasps. MIA stood beside him, her face pale, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. They had done it. They had survived, but Alex knew one thing for sure, the forest wasn't done with them. It had just allowed them to leave.